All right, I just reviewed the footage. I think it's okay. So I put out on Instagram feedback type post things asking for questions for a Q&A. I figured we would do a Q&A here on YouTube. I got a bunch of different questions. I got everything ranging from business to fashion to books. So I grabbed as many as I could. I can't get to everything. I picked ones that kept reoccurring. I think we can touch on kind of the stuff people want to know about. So let's just jump right into it with the first question being, who or what got you into fashion? Put a picture up. So this picture is of A$AP Rocky. He is wearing, I believe, Gucci floral jeans, and he's walking next to a silver 458 Ferrari. I remember seeing this photo. I don't remember exactly when it came out, but I saw the photo and I was like, wow, that's really good. After that, it was kind of starting to look at what people were wearing, especially like celebrities, or for me, it was A$AP Rocky for a long time, just because that was the initial picture that sparked my interest. Now it's less looking at individual people and more looking at time periods, specifically for me, kind of 60s, 70s, 80s. Those different time periods each have big cultural things going on within them that you see kind of come out in the clothing that's being worn. And I think when I dress now, I try to weave some of that into my outfits. I try to wear nice pieces in a cohesive way that has its own kind of look about it. Like, it's not something you would see off the rack of maybe like the fast fashion brands, but it's also not something you really see in people who are just kind of pulling a lot of their fashion from like Instagram explore pages or stuff like that. Moving on. What's the future of Minted looking like? As a lot of you know, started Minted New York as a jewelry brand. That was our first product, was the jewelry, the chains that I wear around my neck. We expanded that product line and then kind of naturally moved into apparel. In the move to apparel, we started kind of making everything, it felt like. We do performance wear, we do kind of higher end pieces, with the first stuff being trousers, as well as the 2 colorways of that jacket that I have shown. Down the road, Minted as a whole will be much bigger than just fashion and jewelry. I have spoken before about wanting to do fintech and have an entire arm of Minted be fintech. How and what way I go about that, I'm not 100% sure. I have a few ideas in mind, but that whole entire world, when you move into the fintech space, is generally highly regulated. So for me, it's not something that can be implemented as fast as something like fashion or new pieces or new product line in fashion. Regulation has to be done the right way. As far as Minted Health goes, continue to expand those product lines. I was speaking to my manufacturer, where we have the peach tea, obviously we have the pink lemonade that is being sampled, trying to get that correct. Speaking to my manufacturer about a protein powder, however, he informed me that because of COVID and general supply chain issues, that protein powder probably isn't the best thing to try and work on right now. So I kind of re-geared, and we are working on an endurance mix, kind of endurance electrolyte mix. That's obviously, there will be a sampling process there. Down the road, need to do protein. Obviously, it's a very critical part of being in the gym or just recovery in general. A bit of a media side of Minted that I have in mind. I've talked about it before. I don't know how detailed I want to get into explaining it, because sometimes I worry that like lose an edge that way. Talk more when it's closer to being ready. But have you ever gone through depression? If so, how did you work through it? I have never been clinically diagnosed with depression, although I will say that kind of mid to end sophomore year of college into junior year of college, I was in a pretty bad mental headspace. There was a lot of things going on. It doesn't really even need to be talked about. It's just like put me in a really bad mental state. I was leaving college every chance I could get, because I was playing sports, so I couldn't really leave that often, but every chance I could get to go home, I would drive 3 hours to be home with my parents, and then dread driving back to like go back to school and practice and everything the next week. I would have Saturday, kind of after practice ended in the morning, like 11, leave, be home late Saturday, have all of Sunday, not even all of Sunday because I would have to drive back Sunday night. And that like little gap was a nice break, but ultimately I think something that helped the most is I was forced to take an art elective. And in doing so, I had an Art 1 class. I had a teacher, his name Father McNally, played a pretty integral role in me kind of working through the emotions and the stuff I had going on inside my head. He introduced me to painting. Obviously, that's what the class was. Through painting, he pushed you outside of your comfort zone. When I went in, and he was a good teacher in this way, he didn't really give you many parameters to work with. He's pretty much would say paint whatever you want and on any size canvas and kind of do whatever, and then we'll have like an art critique. And it wasn't even a critique, it was just explain your art. And in the beginning, I wanted everything to be perfect. And I was using small brushes, small canvases, you know, stuff kind of this big. One day, a couple weeks into class, he came over and he was, I want you to put down the small brush, put down the small canvas, and I want you to get a big canvas, a big brush, and move in big strokes. Do not worry about the detail of the stroke, just move in big strokes. And so then it felt as though it could just freely flow out of my hand, like just whatever I needed to paint, just started to paint. And I just started painting. Like I wouldn't go home on the weekends, I would go to the art studio and paint on the weekends. And it was really just the first time in those couple months where I had some sense of calm in my head. Felt like I was just tormented by all of these emotions, and then in the painting, in the act of painting, there was calm. I think if you look at some of the artwork, my parents have some of the artwork in the basement at their house. If you look at some of that artwork, you will realize that there was some stuff going on deep down just because of what I was producing. It was very dark, a reflection of what was going on inside. Now we have like, I still paint on big canvases. I have one here and one right next to it. And I haven't painted recently just because I've been so busy, but just the type of artwork has shifted and changed completely different headspace. As soon as the day of graduation happened, I had an immediate weight lifted off my shoulders. Felt like my life could finally start. Dream collab, content creator, and brand/designer. That's a good question. As far as collaborating with a content creator, to be honest with you, I have nobody off the top of my mind. There's a lot of great content creators out there. I really don't have an answer for that because one, I've not even really thought of it. And two, I've never really been like the collaborating with other content creators guy. As far as collaborating with a brand/designer goes, I've talked about this before. On the performance athletic wear side of things, Nike is the dream. I think they're probably at the forefront as far as brands go in research and development of performance textiles, performance running shoes, like that whole sphere of performance wear. As far as kind of like a lifestyle shoe, New Balance. I think I could see myself reworking the 327. 550 has been done by so many people. Do I think it could be done? Sure. But I'd want to do the 327 just because I have worn the 327 a lot. I've had it on social media a lot, and I've had a lot of people ask me about the 327s that I wear, and they haven't really known them until I kind of told them about it. So I think it's kind of more a natural segue right into that shoe. What kind of books do you read? I read a lot of books. I started reading books in college mid-junior year. I kind of gave up on paying attention in class. I know this is gonna sound so stupid. And I would bring books to class and then just read the books and not pay attention in class. Because I've always kind of subscribe to the mental model of I love to learn what I want to learn, and the stuff that I was being taught in school is just not stuff that I wanted to learn. So I got so fed up and bored with the classes that I was being forced to take that I would read in a majority of my classes. Some of my favorite books that I have ever read, the first being Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I read that about 2 years ago. I was in a bit of like a flux period in my life, kind of trying to decide what I wanted to do career-wise, and I was able to pull a lot of parallels between the stuff he was writing about at that time and what I was going through, and it just kind of showed me that the stuff we're going through doesn't really change. The time period may change, the stuff around us may change, but all of the experiences are generally the same to some degree. On Emotional Intelligence by the Harvard Business Review, it is a collection of, I believe it's 10 papers. It's really good. I think emotional intelligence is something in business that a lot of people can benefit from, kind of handling people or understanding how to talk to people, understanding how to relate to people, understanding just like the ins and outs of what you're feeling, how you are perceived by people, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Another good book, very dry. It's also extremely long. I listened to that one on tape on my longer runs actually, because I didn't want to read it, to be honest with you, just page by page, just a long book. But it was very good, and there's a lot of insight that you can learn kind of in the corporate America world. I think it's kind of more a businessy book, but at the same time, apply it to a lot of you can apply the principles to a lot of different things. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl chronicles his time in a Nazi concentration camp. Speechless about the book, because you realize how bad some people have had it and they've come out the other end just simply because they don't give up hope. And I think that kind of is the summary of the book. Like, as long as you maintain your hope in your situation or in the situation of the people around you, you can make it through a lot more than you probably ever thought that you could. And the book kind of just shows how low human condition can stoop when people are just acting upon orders. Disturbing, really. The Millionaire Next Door. This was something I read, I think, junior year of college. A bit of a primer on saving and managing money. Kind of have to learn it on your own if your parents aren't going to teach it to you, because the school system isn't going to teach it to you. How many hours of training, gym plus running, per week do you do? So in total, I'm in the gym about 7.5 hours a week. It's about 1 hour and 15 per day, 6 days per week. On top of that, it's about 3.5 to 4 hours of running per week, which really, you know, if you think about it, comes out to like 11.5 hours, which of the 168 hours in a week, and then subtract, say, 8 hours of sleep per night, comes out to about 10% of your week is spent exercising. In the grand scheme of things, it's really not that bad. Now, my training will kind of change a bit if we get into the New York City Marathon and the New York City Half Marathon and the Chicago Marathon. We will really have to bump up the running training hours and mileage. And in doing so, there will probably be a decrease in the amount of time spent in the gym. It'll probably even out to 15, 17 hours a week running, or just training in general, but who knows? Were you always this disciplined? I would say close to it, but in a much different way. For me, in high school, it was a lot of my time was spent chasing the Division I athletics goal. As soon as I kind of set sight on playing Division I lacrosse, it was shaping my days around that. Whether good or bad, I'm not sure. It required, you know, getting into the gym and doing a lot of work on the field. I was never the most like gifted player. I had to put in a lot of time on the field, on the wall, just to make sure that I was either keeping up or trying to claw back some of that skill that I was missing. I was pretty disciplined with that all through high school, and then into college it was more of the same. For a while I had just subscribed to all I wanted to do was perform as well as I could perform in the sport. I had never really been very good at school. I've talked about this before. Like in high school I had 2.75 GPA. In college even, like barely pushing a 3.0. When I'm uninterested in the subjects being taught, I cannot focus. But as soon as I find something that I enjoy and that I love to do, I can hyper focus for extremely long, drawn out periods of time. I think it kind of shows with the way that I run Minted New York, how I have no problem. Pretty much spent the last 9 months of this year working full time and running this 2 businesses on top of it. And that was a grind. Loved every second of it. It became a lot, so we had to quit the job. But it made complete financial sense to do it at that point, and I wouldn't have ever put myself into jeopardy by making the jump too early. You know, it was right time, right place. But even now, you know, it's still long days and pretty much the only thing that I care about. I love doing it and I can hyper focus on it. And so I think I'm extremely blessed to be able to be in a position like this where I am actually doing what I love. What's the best advice you've got? You know, when I was growing up, and I always would speak to my dad about the jobs that he had. A really interesting route to kind of where he is now in the government, but he was an actor, working as a meat packer, just working a bunch of odd jobs as a bouncer, like all the way up until he was 30 years old. Joined the government, career in the government. When I look back on it now, and when we look back on it now, and I talk to him about those things, he always had this saying of a job is a job. And he didn't care what the job was. He was gonna work it, do it extremely well to put food on the table for his family. And that's kind of just this, a job is a job, or like never be too proud to sweep the floors. Like that whole mindset of take pride in whatever it is you're doing, no matter what it is, and try to do it to the best of your ability. Always be working toward the next thing. Minted storefront. There will be a minted storefront at some point. A proper storefront in West Village or Soho area is gonna run me about 25, 30 grand a month. And I'm torn with the idea of a storefront being a place where you're just purchasing items. I want it to be more of a community hangout. People, like-minded people can come hang out. We have a coffee bar in the store. People can share ideas, and it's just more of like a collective of people. And you can kind of buy items as a side thing that you can do in the store. So it's just like a part of the store that's not in your face, like buy items. It's just there if you want it, but majority of the store is catered toward people from the community, people just working toward whatever they're working on, hanging out, sharing ideas, interacting. That is my idea of a storefront. Biggest goals for 2022. I personally don't like talking about goals in an open way. Do it, and if you're doing it well and you're consistent, you're gonna work and accomplish goals, no matter how lofty they are. I just, put my head down and work toward them, and then just kind of check them off as we go along. Best podcast and books / audiobooks. We talked about books. As far as podcasts go, I really only listen to one kind of regularly, and regularly means maybe once a month. It's called How I Built This with Guy Raz. The reason I listen to this podcast is because he interviews people who have been relatively successful across a wide range of sectors and industries. The interview starts ground zero. They're building their business, or maybe they're still working in their other job while trying to build the business, and then they take it all the way to usually an exit, or the business is doing 9 figures in revenue, that type deal. I encourage entrepreneurs to listen to this podcast specifically, because the way I listen to it is I take in where I'm currently at with everything that I have going on. And there's usually at least 2 or 3 times per episode where there's a nugget of information that comes out of the entrepreneur's mouth about what they were dealing with at a certain time that you can apply to something you are either going to see in the near future or that you're dealing with now. And I think that is extremely invaluable. At the end of the day, if they have achieved some level of success that you are striving for, just listen to what they have to say and try to take little nuggets and apply it to whatever it is that you are currently moving through. Favorite movie of all time: Prisoners with Jake Gyllenhaal, Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver a bit older than the other two. Movie genre is more of psychological thriller. Those are the movies that I love the most. I don't really watch much of anything else, and I haven't watched a movie. I don't even know if I've watched a movie this year. I did, but I was on a flight from New York to LA. What made you venture into health in terms of business, considering the amount of competition? I kind of touched on this. I don't know when I touched on it, but I touched on it. And I said that the health supplements industry is one of the most cutthroat and competition dense industries I think that I can think of. Barrier to entry, not very high. The amount of people getting into the industry is large. So for me, I knew I had to come out of the gate with something that was going to differentiate myself from whatever was on the market. And we started with the pre-workout. And for me, I'd never had a peach tea pre-workout, used a lot of pre-workout. So I was like, if we can get the flavor right and not have it be one of those like super sour flavors with a bunch of proprietary ingredients where you don't even know what's in the product, and we can keep the ingredients list relatively simple, have only ingredients that have proven to be effective, and use them and dose them in an effective way, then we might be able to break into the market. Did that, and I didn't expect the pre-workout to have as much demand as it's had. I believed in it, but I thought the growth graph was going to be relatively incremental month over month. However, there was like month 1 and 2 where that was kind of happening. And then month 3 and 4, growth exploded. We ran out of product, and I couldn't even submit an order fast enough with my manufacturer to put our formula into place. There's now a lag time and there's downtime between manufacturing start and manufacturing end. That's like a 10-week cycle. I'll be down without product for 10 weeks. As somebody trying to enter into a market, it's not good. It's not good as a business owner to have this downtime. However, I'm not sure how I could have planned for it better just because the demand ramped up so fast. Now, I could have had stuff in production already, but at the same time, I run as lean as I can. Another good book, The Lean Startup, talks about just running as lean as possible. So that kind of would have gone against how I run the business. Probably every advisor, if I had ever gone to an advisor, would have said not to enter the health supplement industry. Those are the ends of the questions. I'll probably do another one of these if I have to, or if people want a part 2.